Okay.
My name is Velma Howell, and my parents were Leonard Pickens Ellison, and my mother was Levy Eliza.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had 7 sisters and 2 brothers.
Where did you live when you were growing up?
We lived. I was born on a farm in North Alabama, about 9 miles from Cullen.
And do you mind telling what your birthday is?
I was.
How are you? Banana? Not red.
Really good.
So I made it.
Really good. Oh, good. That's what I like.
Angry, isn't he? No, I'm just hard. He doesn't like this party, does he? The day is your birthday, and you're 96 years old. Yeah. She had a birthday.
Trying to get you on here.
Caitlin, do me a favor, pick up that fork right there, please. Will you put it on there? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Kenneth, I'm going to hold back my shoulders. I did too when I came up. You want some ball for you? That was it. It's gone. It's gone. Come to goes.
Mavis, you gonna turn your back on me?
Yeah, I'm going to see my back on you. Cheat. Kate come home last night and she said, I sure did like Mavis's haircut. Said she's had her hair all cut off. I said that she just had it back. All right, is everybody keeping their fork or not?
We're being open.
How you doing, Clay? Let me say something again. Velma has been in Fort Meade for a yay number of years, and today she is 96 years of age, but she sure doesn't act like it. But we have a little gift here to present to her from the society, and we want her to open it now and see what it is, and then we're going to bring out her happy birthday cake and sing happy birthday.
There goes the truck with her hair dye in it. She gets it delivered in Tractor Trailer Ridge.
Jennifer. Bring it, baby. You want to go stand by Mike? Well, wait a minute.
Tiff or Caitlin, go around there and stand by Mom, see what she opens. Excuse me.
I love our new little camera.
Okay.
My name is Velma Howell, and my parents were Leonard Pickens Ellison, and my mother was Levy Eliza.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had 7 sisters and 2 brothers.
Where did you live when you were growing up?
We lived. I was born on a farm in North Alabama, about 9 miles from Cullen.
And Do you mind telling what your birthday is?
I was born April the 17th, 1912.
All right. And you moved to Fort Meade about what time? How old were you?
We came to Fort Meade in 1918. World War I was just, armistice had been signed just a week when we got to Fort Meade, because they were still celebrating in the streets. When we got off the train that night, I asked my mother what were they doing, and dancing and balloons and firecrackers was going off, and she said, well, they're still celebrating the armistice. And I was 6 years old, and I remember exactly how Fort Meade looked at that time. All of the buildings were new, made out of red brick. The streets on both sides was lined with two-story red brick buildings. And the street was wide just like it is now, and it was paved with red brick. And I thought that was the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. And they had just put in the electric lights. They called it the White Way. Well, it'd been in 1916 is when they paved the street, built the high school, and they put in the White Way.
When you say White Way, was that down Broadway or down
Broadway,
Okay.
yeah.
In the business district?
Huh?
Where the business is now?
Yeah,
That was the only place that had those lights?
yeah, it was down Broadway. But it was just a beautiful sight. It looked like seeing a Christmas picture. And I couldn't get over. And at that time, Lakeland had very few, if any, red brick buildings. I read that in the paper. And they saw how beautiful Fort Meade was, and then they started building with red brick. And I thought that was unusual because Lakeland was bigger.
Were there trees downtown? Were there trees, trees like elm trees or oak trees downtown?
No, there was not oak trees right downtown, but it was from where the light is now. It was all down Charleston,
Mm-hmm.
lined on both streets.
Both sides of the strip?
On both sides of the street was the most beautiful big oaks, and it was just a beautiful thing. And then later on, when they improved the streets, they cut the trees down, and everybody hated that so bad because that was really beautiful.
Were you, what was the transportation? Did everybody walk to town, or did they?
Well, in 1918, the Ford had just been invented, the Model T, in 1914, I think, but they were comparatively cheap, and lots of people had Model Ts. My daddy was the first one on our farm in Alabama to buy a Model T. And he took a bale of cotton to town, and just with that one bale of cotton, he bought the Model T
Oh my.
with the money from the bale, because it was during 1917, during the war, and cotton was very, very high. So he bought the Model T with the proceeds of the bale of cotton. And he came to Fort Meade. He always wanted to come to Florida to get out of the cold weather. And so he got on the train one day and came to Fort Meade. came down to Polk County, he had heard that there was a boom going, and so he looked around at different towns, and he decided that Fort Meade was a place for him. And he couldn't get back to Alabama fast enough to sell our farm. So he sold it, and then he came down in the Model T with my two younger brothers and found a house for us to live in, and then he sent for us a week later, and the rest of the family came down on the train.
Where did you live down here in Fort
Pardon?
Meade? Where did you live in Fort Meade?
Well, the first house we lived in Fort Meade was right next to, well, what was the Moments Club, but I think it's been destroyed now, right off Charleston. But it was small, and my daddy found a larger one, and it was down West Broadway, right near what they call the Happy Jack Railroad. And that one, houses were being, there were real estate people everywhere selling. You could just, every corner you'd see a real estate man, because it was the boom time, and so somebody bought that house. Then we had to move. And then we moved to a hotel right on Broadway, West Broadway. My daddy rented that hotel, and he was going to, he had also put up a grocery store in the meantime, and he was going to run or my mother was going to run the hotel. We hadn't been in it any time until the hotel sold. And then we moved down North Tecumseh, down from the bank. And we lived there, I guess 4 years, until that sold. And then we moved back across to West Broadway, and I graduated. By then I had graduated, and so I lived there until I got married and went to Lake Wales.
Tell me about your friends. What did y'all do for fun? What did you do for entertainment
Well,
when you were growing up?
when I was growing up, well, right here in Fort Meade, we did have a movie called the Fox Theater, and you could go to the movie for a dime, and you could go across the street and get a cherry smash for a nickel. And that was about the fun thing that we did on Saturday night. But the schools, had plays once in a while, and people went on picnics, and just enjoyed life, doing things like that. And when girls and boys dated, there wasn't very much to do, and they didn't have cars, like they do now to ride around in, and so they did mostly walking. And it's kind of strange. They'd go walk to the cemetery and look at the tombstones for entertainment. And someone told me the other day, they said, we used to do that. And then there was a sidewalk, though, that had been built down in what they called Old Town, that led down to Peace River. and that was called Lover's Lane, and that was walked on quite a bit. But we used to, as a kid, we made our, we were living in a big house, and there was a partition between the dining room and living room, big partition, and my older sister would make up little skits, and there's so many of us in our family, and we'd get the neighbor children, and we would put on little plays for our dad and mothers. And because at night, people didn't go anywhere. You know, they'd work and go home, and on Saturday night, everybody went to town and stayed till 1 o'clock, just visiting, walking up and down the street. But we put on little plays, and I remember we would put the chairs in a semicircle in our living room and invite the neighbors in, and to please us, the neighbors would come, and we charged them a penny, and then they'd give us when they paid us a penny, and we'd give them a little stick of candy, and we just enjoyed doing that, and I guess everybody did things like that.
So was there any part of Old Town? Was there any part of Old Town still in existence?
Well, yes, there were. There's that one house I know that's still there now. When I remember, it was the Kellers lived there right down, past church, I think. Can't remember what street that is, or Henry. Anyhow, the house is still there. And then, for years, there was a little store down across the street from the Orange little store on East Broadway.
Right.
There was a Miss McCarley had a store there for a long, long time, but the store buildings were all gone. When we came down, they were gone. And of course the railroad had been taken up too. I don't remember exactly the date was taken up.
The trolley?
Yeah, it wasn't there when we came down, but most of the roads were dirt.
Oh, okay.
They hadn't paved. In 1926 even, there was a lot of streets that was not paved. Even in towns like Lakeland, you know, lots and lots of streets were dirt. But people enjoyed life, and everybody trusted everybody. You could go to bed at night. You never locked your door. I never thought of ever locking. My dad and mother never locked our doors. Nobody else did either, because people didn't go around stealing.
About how many people were in Fort Meade?
Well, about 1918, I'd say there was about 2,500, about that. Fort Meade hasn't grown too much, except in churches. We have 25 churches. Last time I counted, there's 25 churches in a 5-mile radius of Fort Meade. We ought to all be good.
Well,
Should be. Maybe it takes that many.
well, when you were, you moved to Lake Wales after you got married, but you came back in 4 years, right?
Yeah. I met Buck in Lake Wales, and we got married, and we we lived there 4 years, and I always wanted to come back to Fort Meade. I didn't say anything about it, but he knew I'd really love to come back. And one day he just said, you know, I just think I'd like to live in Fort Meade. He said, would you like to go back? Well, I was packing by the time he got through talking, I was packing. But Lake Wales is a nice place, but we were living out in the country, in a grove, 5 miles from town, and times were hard, you know, and we married in 1936, and the Depression wasn't quite over. And so we didn't have a car for a long time, and so I just, if times had been better, I might have liked Lake Wales more, but it was just, the times were bad. And so we came back, and he loved Fort Meade just as much as I did.
Well, tell me about your family with your husband.
Huh?
Tell me your husband's name, and tell me your children and your family's names.
Well, when I met Buck, he had been a widower 3 years. His wife had died, and had left these 3 little boys. And my sister says, Velma, why don't you date Buck? And I said, now, if you want him to date anybody, you date him. I'm not going to date a man with 3 kids. And, but anyhow, I did. And fell in love right away, and with the kids too. And I just love those kids. They just were like my own. And we had a real happy family. They loved me, and I just worshiped them. One of the boys is still in Lakeland, and he calls me every morning and every night to see how I am.
And what's his name?
Pardon?
What is his name?
His name is Donald Howell, and he's retired, and his wife just died a little over a year ago.
What are the other 2 boys' names?
Well, the youngest boy's name was Rex, and the older one was Billy, and they've been dead about, well, they died, and one died in 1991, and the other one died 11 months later. 2 of them died within 11 months.
And tell me about your child. Tell me about your child.
Sally, well, Buck and I had Sally, and we all worshipped her, and the boys just idolized her, and she was such a joy. And she fell in love with a real nice boy. He was 21, and she wanted to get married. We didn't want her to get married. We said, you are too young, and all she ever thought about, all she ever wanted was to be a mother, a wife, and a mother. She just didn't want to think about going to college. So she was very young when they got married, and we gave them a real nice wedding at the church. It's the first big wedding in our new church. And
That's the First Baptist Church.
yeah, and they were married 9 months to the day and to the hour that they got to the beach when they got married. And she died that night in childbirth. And so they were living here with us, and we were planning on helping them build a house. And Nelson, her husband, he continued to live here until Debbie was 16 months old, and he was going into service. And so he let us adopt Debbie. And you know, all courage is not always on a battlefield. It's sometime right in your own home. And Nelson, he shed many tears, but he said, no, I think it's best that you all go ahead and adopt her, because I don't know where I'll be. I could get killed, and he said, I want to know that she will be taken care of. So we loved him, and we still do. We visit him all the time, and every time we can go to Tallahassee, that's where he lives with his family, and they're here. They came down Easter and went to church with me, he and his wife, and he married Sally's best girlfriend, and she'd be very happy to know that he married Marilyn, and I love her, and she loves me, and we just have a good relationship.
Well, now, anytime anybody comes to your house, they see your beautiful paintings. Tell me how you got started in painting and being so artistic and talented.
Well, I always wanted to paint. In school, in our science class, I made more of my drawings than I made than anything else. But see, I went to high school during the Depression, and that was a time you could barely buy paper to write on. And my mother was a widow. My daddy had died just a year before the Depression started. And of course the banks went bursted, and we were left with that one red penny. So Mama had a house full of kids, and everybody's in the same boat. You know, you couldn't take art. I wanted to, but I could never take art. So I would just sketch things myself now and then, and didn't think much about it then. And after I got married, I was thrown head heels into work, and so I said, if I ever retire, I'm going to paint and take music. And but I had started painting before I quit, before I retired, because I didn't retire till I was 78.
What did you do?
I worked with the Spanish-speaking children in the preschool. I worked there 20 years. And so I just started painting on my own. I got some canvas, and I painted with oil at first. And then I decided I'd take some lessons, and I did. I took just a few lessons in watercolor. And that's all the training I've had, just a few lessons. But my mother was talented, and one of my sisters were. They all had some talent. One of my sisters, or two, were just expert seamstresses. They could make. They were just good, and I had no talent that way. But most of us had some talent. My brother he was artistic. So I've just been painting on my own, and it's the most enjoyable thing you could ever get into, relaxing, and as someone said, art is the only thing you can do to travel and stay home too, and you can. It's just a real pleasure.
Can you tell me what you want Fort Meade to be like in 100 years from now?
Well, if I had my wish, I just would wish that I could walk back to Fort Meade and go down the street and see all those buildings again that was here when it was so beautiful. I don't think I'd want it to change much in any way. I've been so happy with it, and I know we got the best people in the world. As I said, with all these churches, it can be very bad.
Do you you're getting ready to have your birthday.
Pardon?
You're getting ready to have your birthday.
Yes.
And your birthday is going to be,
April 17th.
and this is Velma Howell month at the Historic Society.
Yeah, be for the whole month.
Well, that's very special.
Yeah. And then next month it will be another member, for a month. It'll be a change to what they've been doing.
And you're going to be how old?
I will be 96.
96. Well, that's wonderful. I appreciate so much you letting me interview you and share your home and your talent. You're a very wonderful lady.
Well, thank you. I have so many friends, There just isn't anything like having a lot of good friends. And Fort Meade has some of the best.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
I've got some more paintings in here I can show you.